All right, good morning. Being 9 o'clock, we'll open up ED&A. And Commissioner, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, we're going to have a little bit lighter committee today because some of our folks are over at Granite Place introducing bills. And so we're going to start off with just me right now, but I do know there'll be more feeding in as we go. So we'll open the hearing on House Bill 1157 and recognize Representative Bixby to introduce.
All right, so this bill was a request from the department, and the issue was that there were some people who were getting around the the maximum of number of animals one could transfer without being registered as a pet vendor by having several different people all living at the same place claiming an exemption. So you have, say, Mom and Dad and Bob and Sue, each saying that they transferred 29 dogs and were therefore exempt, even though the household is transferring over 100, which didn't seem like a very fair situation, and it seemed like a loophole that needed to be plugged. And what the language that the commissioner gave me does is it plugs that loophole. Any questions?
Doesn't really seem to be any. No, so I guess the thinking is, and I'll throw this out, Commissioner, if you want to respond as well. I guess the thinking is that if you get at least one of them licensed, you can have an inspection within the facility.
Yes, yeah. Well, actually, I believe that the commissioner signed up to speak. So if you want more details, I can sign off and he can answer any further questions.
All right, thank you, Representative. Commissioner Jasper. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I am Sean Jasper, Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture, Markets and Food. And I do thank Representative Bixby and others, including you, for sponsoring and co-sponsoring the bill. And pretty much just as Representative Bixby stated, except that the people transferring the animals don't even actually have to live at that address. Well, and that makes it even more complicated, but this does allow us to get in and do an inspection. And this was a loophole we discovered because someone who couldn't maintain their license and was having issues with the town figured out this loophole, and now it's transferring, I don't know how many animals, we could look it up, but it wasn't important. We know that just with like 3 of them, they went well over the number required to be licensed and be inspected. So,
All right. Not seeing any other questions. So, thank you for your testimony.
all right, thank you.
Anybody else want to testify at 1157? Kurt, you don't want to come up and at least say hello? You're good? All right. With that, we will close the hearing on House Bill 1157. And I'm not going to exec because I don't have anybody to second. So I guess we'll be in recess until 9:10. All right, being 9:10, we will come out of recess and I will open the hearing on House Bill 1569. Representative Tversky, you're introducing? Yes. I will recognize you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Representative Wallner, the prime sponsor of this bill, actually has 3 bills being introduced this morning, so I am pinch hitting for her as a co-sponsor.
Thank you.
Yes. House Bill 1569 would repeal a section of HB2 which directs the state to sell the Philbrook Center located on the grounds of the New Hampshire Hospital. Built in the 1960s and named after child psychiatrist Anna Philbrook, the center provided children's residential mental health services for several decades, and in the early 2000s, the building housed office space for several state agencies. Most recently, the Philbrook Center has been a transitional housing program with 16 beds, serving people leaving New Hampshire Hospital, and the building houses office space for about 54 employees and provides storage for records for the hospital. But the question is, how did the sale of the Philbrook building end up in the budget? Last year, at the very last minute, House Finance Division 3, which I'm a member of, as we were coming to the end, brought forward this proposal of selling the Philbrook Center for $5 million, which made its way into House Bill 2. To be clear, the selling of the facility was never a bill. We never had a public hearing. We never had a deep discussion. We didn't have feedback from members of different departments that could be affected by this, and there was very little, if any, public input on the sale of the building. So when HB2 reached the Senate, the sale of the Philbrook Center received little attention. As I mentioned, the Philbrook Center currently is being used as a 16-bed transitional housing program, serving people discharged from New Hampshire Hospital, which is really an important step in meeting the Mission Zero program to ensure that they can discharge patients from New Hampshire Hospital and provide beds for people who are waiting for care in emergency rooms. When the bill came before Division 3, like I said, we didn't have a whole lot of time to do a deep dive, but when this bill came to us, we had a work session where we heard from a number of different people, including Charlie Arlinghouse, on giving us information that I wish we had had last year when we talked about selling the property. So I just want to touch on a few key points that came up in that discussion to better educate us about this. That amount of $5 million got pulled out of thin air. That number was just picked, and we have no idea if the building is actually worth $5 million. In fact, we were told it isn't. We now understand that to hit that $5 million amount, we would have to include many acres of land in the sale. So there was no discussion of selling state land. We talked specifically about a building. We also heard that the property shouldn't be sold willy-nilly for a one-time influx of cash because owning is better for the state than renting in the long run, and we would have to move these employees and find another place to put them. Specialized space like this for transitional housing is very hard to come by, and office space is often not empty and available at a drop of a hat when we need it. No clear plan exists when we had this discussion a few weeks ago on where to move these 54 employees that are currently in Philbrook. And another aspect that we didn't consider was the cost of moving these employees and getting them set up in a new location with appropriate office space. And finally, as far as the specific building, it's been outfitted for housing, and these facilities are very difficult to come by, and the building has seen investment in the property by the state in the last few years. So for all these reasons, and I assume we may hear from a few others today, I would encourage you to support House Bill 1569. The bill received a unanimous vote from House Finance, passed the House without debate, and the Philbrook Center is a useful building in a useful location, and there are too many reasons that have now come to light telling us that we should hold on to it. So I ask you consider not to pass recommendation.
Thanks for your testimony. Did you have any discussion about how you'd fill the $5 million hole this is going to put in the budget?
A little bit. And the reality was we talked about that existing back of the budget cut on the department. And it was going to have to be absorbed, but at the same time, there was talk about the cost of moving all those employees and finding a different place. And they said that could cost anywhere up to $900,000 to $1,000 to $1 million. And so it was sort of offsetting without really knowing what those numbers really amounted to.
I suspect I mean, if we pass this out of policy committee, it's gonna go to finance and it may run into a buzzsaw there. But
I
I
understand.
sit on finance too. That's why I'm sort of
I know.
adding that now.
Same.
But-
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I thank you for bringing the information. I mean, I remember it being in the budget and you're right, we didn't have a lot of discussion about it, but I think my biggest concern is how we're gonna fill that $5 million gap.
Understood.
Any questions? Senator McGill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question, Representative Shalerski. Is this the building where Vital Records is, the Vital Records Bureau?
That I don't know. There's
What's
probably,
next?
no.
What's the next
I-
building?
No.
Yeah, I just remember hearing that there was some reason to relocate those employees, water damage or some repair work ongoing over there. And I just want to make sure it's not the same building that requires significant investment.
It sounds like from Dr. Lapointe that that's not the same place, so they may be able to provide more information.
Thank you.
Further questions? All right, seeing none.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having me.
Rep. Popovici Muller, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, and thank you for hearing my testimony. I just wanted to briefly say that as a member of the House Finance Committee, this is a bill that basically came out 25-0 because to us, this is revenue that we don't believe we'll see. And if I don't believe that I will actually see the revenue, I don't think it's appropriate to recognize it as potential revenue in the state budget. So to me, it's not as much a question of how are we going to replace it. It's more of a question of recognizing that it's unlikely to materialize, and therefore I shouldn't have an entry for it expecting to receive money. As my colleague was testifying, there are significant complications around making this sale happen, and she didn't even get through the whole thing, and I don't plan to, because as you said, if you move the bill forward, we'll have another discussion on it, and we'll save the, rest of it for then. But I think it is not okay to have that $5 million marker when I don't think we'll see that revenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? All right, seeing none. Rep. Damon, did you want to speak or no? Just wanted to make sure I didn't skip by if you did.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hope Damon, Sullivan District 8. I'm a co-sponsor, and I would just be repeating what has been offered, but vigorously support that we retain this property.
Thank
you.
Sam Haskins? Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. For the record, my name is Sam Hawkins. I'm here today representing NAMI New
Sorry,
Hampshire.
I read it as an
It was
S.
my bad with the handwriting. Representing NAMI New Hampshire in support of House Bill 1569 and to talk a little bit about the context of the Philbrook Center and its relationship to the larger mental health system. So as was previously referenced, the Philbrook Center previously served as a 24-bed psychiatric facility in 2010, prior to its 2010 closure, which resulted due to a need for renovations. Following that closure, the children at Philbrook were moved to New Hampshire Hospital, the state adult psychiatric hospital. But as those children required single bed rooms, the 24 beds was actually a loss of 48 adult beds for the hospital. There are a lot of changes that led eventually to emergency department boarding arriving here in New Hampshire in the early 2010s, but it could be referred to as the straw that broke the camel's back. We have been doing a lot of work through the collaborative Mission Zero initiative, and we have seen a lot of progress in reducing emergency department boarding. Last year in 2025, there were 8 days where there were 0 adults subject to an involuntary emergency admission waiting in emergency departments. Can compare that through all the years of 2017 through 2024 when there were only 8 days in total where that number was 0. A big part of how we made this progress was the reestablishment of Hampstead Hospital, New Hampshire Hospital then achieving its full capacity again, and the reopening of Philbrook as a 16-bed transitional housing program for adults. We do have a lot more to do, though. You may be aware that on any given day, more than half of the individuals at New Hampshire Hospital are clinically stable and ready for discharge, but they have no appropriate setting within the community to be discharged to. Since these folks are clinically stable, they are no longer eligible for coverage of their time in the hospital. That means there's a cost to the state for them staying in New Hampshire Hospital of around $1,600 a day. The program at Philbrook currently has found a new 16-bed home elsewhere in the state. However, that 16-bed facility was already part of the state's bed capacity, bed inventory. So with the program at Philbrook closing, we are seeing a net loss of 16 beds for the system. If you consider that $1,600 a day, imagine then, because of the closure of this program, that 16 people will not be able to discharge. You can see how that number snowballs into a rather large amount. If the state were to maintain ownership of Philbrook, and in the future there were resources to stand up another transitional housing program, there would be no need or cost to equip another building from the ground up to serve that program. This flexibility for the system is essential. We would argue that dismantling a system is relatively easy, but when we need to rebuild it in the future, it will be much harder and much more costly. For that reason, and on behalf of the 100 people waiting for discharge from New Hampshire Hospital with no place to go, we do urge the committee to please support House Bill 1569. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm clear. So the 16-bed adult facility is it closed now, or it's closing and they're going to transition them into another location?
I believe the program at Philbrook currently is still at Philbrook, but they will be moving to another 16-bed facility in Newport relatively soon.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the committee? Senator McHugh?
Are you familiar with Senate Bill 572?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me about, I'm just seeing there's a non-germane amendment hearing, I think today, on that bill. Can you tell me how how you expect the two to interact?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So Senate Bill 572, from my understanding, was designed to address some, frankly, legal hurdles that the state would run into should the sale of the Philbrook building go through. There was some disagreement as to whether or not it was actually possible to sell it as it was passed in the budget. Senate Bill 572 would fix that. If the sale were to go forward, it seems that there would need to be changes to the language as in Senate Bill 572. I have not fully reviewed the amendment, but I believe the non-germane amendment is not related to the Philbrook building.
Yeah, my understanding is it's a replace all related to vaccines or something. I'm just getting up to speed on that, but we passed that real estate correction or enabling bill out of this committee for purposes of handling some of that hospital real estate. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none.
Thank you
thanks for
very
your
much.
testimony. Anybody else that wants to testify on 1569? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing. Yep. All right, we're going to open the hearing on House Bill 1631. Who's introducing? Representative, come on up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for listening to my testimony. For the record, and I apologize I didn't do last time I spoke, my name is Daniel Popovich Miller. I represent Windham, Rockingham 17. I am the prime sponsor of HB 1631. And I want to start by saying that it is not only a bipartisan bill in its sponsors, but it did come out of the policy committee 13-5, and it was voted on the floor in a division vote 212 to 127. So while it wasn't unanimous consent type stuff, it is definitely heavily supported in a bipartisan manner. The bill is asking for the reporting on the civil forfeiture to be enhanced. And the bill has been born from the fact that as part of another committee that I was on, a statutory created committee on civil forfeiture, we examined the annual report provided by the Attorney General, and frankly, in its current form, it really doesn't help anyone. It is extremely limited in what it gives, and the data is essentially unusable for policy purpose or for accountability reasons. And the additional data that we are asking here has been significantly reduced since a similar bill has been passed last year, and it did not make it through the Senate because of concerns over privacy issues. And I was very careful to address those concerns. And I do believe that in its current form, those concerns have been properly addressed, and this is a bill that's very much worth supporting. The other quick thing I want to bring up is that there have been suggestions made in the past that if people want more information, they can just make 91A requests for it. As you know, while 91A is available, it is very time and resource consuming, both for the people who would be making those requests and for the people responding to them. And since we do know that this data is needed, both by policymakers and by regular, residents of the state, I think the most responsible course of action is to just have it summarized and prepared and save everybody a lot of time and effort in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Do we have any questions? Senator Gannon?
Hi, Representative. How you doing? I saw you a lot. Didn't I see you yesterday all the time?
I was going to say hello again, yes.
Okay, hello again. So I'm fairly familiar with civil asset forfeiture federally because we do it in a lot because they give us more assets back to the state as opposed to state asset forfeiture. I forget the exact number you keep, but it's much less. So we financially do better with federal. What are you doing with this information? What's it going to help people? Why do they want to know this?
It is accountability. At the end of the day, civil forfeiture is a very tough area of the law, as I'm sure you know, because at the end of the day, there are people who are never convicted who lose property to this program. And I think that we also know that civil forfeiture is an important tool for certain types of police operations in terms of operating against drugs and whatnot. So we want to support the police and give them the tools that they need, but we also have a duty to monitor that they are used correctly. And this is just requiring more information to better understand if, the program is working as expected. And I think we should have this type of accountability for every area of the law, if at all possible, because you should be able to tell people, yes, the program is working as expected, or no, we need to fine-tune it and correct certain potential mistakes.
Thank you.
Further questions? All right,
Thank you very
seeing none,
much.
Thank you. That's the only person I have on the sign-up sheet. Anybody else want to speak on 1631? Seeing none, we will close the hearing. We got 2 minutes before our next one can open. That's okay, no worries. I guess we'll be in a recess until 9:30.
Good day, sir. You too.
So our next bill's on physical fitness. Do you think we should at least make them stand to testify?
Oh, yeah, thanks. It's actually bad. So. Yeah. Yeah, that's me. They told me you could do a mile and a half in the hall, so I can do it.
All right, being 9:30, we're going to open the hearing on House Bill 1805. And did I hear we had volunteers to do push-ups since it is a physical fitness meeting? They can compete, all right. Representative Colby, you're introducing? All right, come on up. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
You have your opportunity to set the bar high if you want to do so. Just go ahead.
I'm afraid that bar would be very low.
All right.
My name is Elena Colby. I represent the beautiful towns of Hopkinton and Bow. I'm here to introduce HB 1805. It is a bipartisan bill designed to improve the retention of law enforcement officers throughout the state of New Hampshire. The bill as amended in front of you is the result of many conversations among law enforcement officers, police chiefs, as well as the Police Standards and Training Council. In 2022 and 2023, House and Senate committees heard testimony regarding a full repeal of the same statute, and although it passed the House, it failed to reach the governor's desk. Fast forward to 2024, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released numbers showing declines in the number of patrol officers across our state. New Hampshire has lost 14% of its law enforcement officers, which is the second largest drop in the country. Also in 2024, the New Hampshire State Police were down 17% of its sworn workforce, and the Department of Corrections 46%. I'm here before you today because failing to address the needed changes to the statute has only exacerbated the problem and further jeopardized public safety. And I hope you find this legislation to be a reasonable compromise between the current statute and the proposed full repeal back in 2022. Agencies across New Hampshire are caught in a vicious cycle where losing just a few personnel creates an operational crisis with far-reaching effects. Staffing shortages leave fewer officers available to handle increased workloads, resulting in costly overtime for taxpayers and burnout among officers. The overtime prevents officers from finding time for family as well as for physical training. The combination of the pressures creates additional stress, resulting in officers quitting, retiring, or failing a fitness exam. This situation further reduces the workforce while increasing the workload, and the cycle continues. We hope that you'll find HB 1805 a legislative tourniquet of sorts to slow the bleeding, requiring all agencies to develop a fitness plan that addresses the overall health of their officers in a more consistent manner. Currently, Police Standards and Training uses testing criteria from the Cooper Institute, including push-ups, sit-ups, and a 1.5 mile run to measure officers' fitness. The Cooper Institute itself cautions against using the exam to define minimum fitness levels for job tasks. The council has been considering moving away from these metrics for years as they don't accurately reflect an officer's ability to perform essential duties. Law enforcement agencies shouldn't lose competent officers over minor fitness setbacks, like being one sit-up short, or running a 1.5 miles just 1/10 of a second too long. Likewise, an officer's financial future and a community's public safety shouldn't hinge on such small margins. Over the past 5 years, a significant number of accomplished officers have retired, while fewer new recruits have joined the ranks. Furthermore, many command staff roles are highly administrative. These officers are not always required in patrol positions. This change would enable agencies to adopt local fitness standards while retaining their dedicated personnel, who possess the valuable knowledge needed to mentor the next generation. Instead of physical fitness exams, most agencies around the country promote wellness programs and incentives within their individual departments. This allows for a customized, holistic approach that encourages a steady workout routine along with nutrition guidance and mental health care sessions. Many New Hampshire chiefs have reported that wellness programs are a much more appealing option to new recruits with young families. In closing, HB 1805 gives agencies the flexibility to adapt while prioritizing public safety and physical fitness. By making these adjustments to the statute, we can develop a more sustainable and appealing career pathway in law enforcement that will ultimately benefit the communities we all serve. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions, although there are much more experienced people behind me.
All right, thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Representative Dry? You are now tasked with answering all the questions. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. For the record, I'm Representative Margaret Dry, Sullivan District 7, towns of Newport, Unity, Charlestown, Plainfield, and Cornish. Plainfield Police Department has space for 5 officers. For a long time, in the last few years, we ran with one officer. He was everything, the chief, the officer, the dog person, everything. It was a stress on him. It was a stress on our department. It was a stress on our town. We finally hired a police chief from out of state who moved up here to take this position. Because he was a certified policeman from before January 1, 2001, he would have been exempt from the test, except that he was from out of state and they don't get the exemption. So he took the Cooper's test and he passed the push-ups and the sit-ups, but he did not run fast enough in the 1.5 mile run. I have been responding as an EMT with the police in our town for emergencies for over 45 years. In all that time, I have never seen an officer do a push-up, a sit-up, or run 1.5 miles in the line of duty. I have seen them pull people out of wrecked cars. I've seen them carry patients up and down staircases and backboards. I have seen them help large patients up into their chairs and their hospital beds. And I've seen them hike through the woods in search of lost hikers and dementia patients who've wandered away. These are the kind of physical functions that the police do in our town. The bill before you offers a chance for police departments to tailor their fitness requirements to fit the requirements of the job. It's a reasonable solution. It keeps fitness and wellness standards, but it doesn't disqualify candidates who can't run fast. My police chief also wanted me to add that because we're on the border, people have a choice to, do I want to work in Vermont? Do I want to work in New Hampshire? And there's anecdotal evidence that people find out that Vermont doesn't have the fitness test requirement every 3 years and kind of opt to go over there. That reduces our pool. That means that we start to pick people from each other's departments rather than from a new pool of officers. And we have to offer bonuses that small towns can't afford. That's a small part of this bill, but I think it's a good start. And so I'm asking you to vote. This bill ought to pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you. Oh, you want to ask one?
Sure. How's
All
my
right,
dance
Senator
partner doing?
Great, thank you.
Good. How long do they have? Do you know what the time is for the 1.5 minutes? Or the 1.5 miles?
Depends on your age
Okay.
and your gender. So,
Okay.
no, he didn't miss it by much, but it was a lot's riding on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator McGee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. So if the law did provide the exemption for out-of-state applicants, that would have fixed your problem?
I believe it would have, yes.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions? Thank you. Rep. Damon, you were in favor. Did you want to speak? Yes.
Thank you. Good morning. State Rep Hope Damon, Sullivan District 8. Margaret and I cover Sullivan County together. So the reality of public safety in our small rural towns, which is mostly what I represent, is largely not contingent on physical challenges that require the current high fitness standards. I think we need to respect the community knowledge that long-term public safety officers in our small towns have, and at the same time recognize bodies change with aging. I'm a retired dietitian. I spent my career helping people take good care of themselves and be reasonably fit. And it is complicated to maintain that fitness level as you get older. Not saying it's impossible, but it's hard. For us to lose the community knowledge of long-term experience, local public safety people because they don't meet that particular fitness standard seems a great loss to me. I have heard from both select board members and local police departments in my district that they very much would appreciate this change in the statute. So I ask you to pass it, and I thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? All right, seeing none. John Skipper. We'll go right to police standards and training now. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. For the record, my name is John Skip. I'm the Director of New Hampshire Police Standards and Training. I am here to represent the New Hampshire Police Standards and Training Council's position on this legislation. This topic has been deliberated for many years in front of the New Hampshire Police Standards and Training Council. And I can tell you that the council's position is reflected specifically in this language as amended. When this bill was initially filed for this legislative session, I had the opportunity to speak with Representative Colby, excuse me, and I also, after speaking with her, brought the initial language to the council for discussion. As represented during testimony today, there's actually been legislative attempts to make changes to the existing standards. And the legislature communicated to us that this topic needed to be resolved by New Hampshire law enforcement. The New Hampshire Police Standards and Training Council statutorily has the authority to set hiring, training, and accountability standards for every certified police officer in the state of New Hampshire. When this language in this bill was initially filed, it was brought to the council's attention. The council deliberated for quite some time on how to balance promoting officer wellness across the state while providing flexibility for each community and each chief law enforcement officer to address officer wellness with their individual employees. As it stands now, a police officer and state corrections officer and a parole officer in the state has to take a fitness test every 3 years. They have to pass that test in order to maintain their certification. If for some reason they're unable to take the test for medical reasons, they're given a 2-year extension. If they don't pass that test, they lose their certification, and in all cases, that leads to them losing their job. It's all or nothing as it is written now. The council has had to listen to police agencies come before them and plead for some kind of flexibility because a small agency is about to lose somebody because they have the inability to do a sit-up or to be able to run for an extended period of time because they have a back injury, things like that. And yet they're fully functional. They can accomplish the essential physical functions of a police officer. They just struggle with these tests that are predicated on the notion that it's transferable. If you can do this many push-ups, then it's presumptive that you probably can do the essential functions of a job. The language that's in front of this committee and as proposed really came from the New Hampshire Police Standards and Training Council. And I am here today to represent their position, which is we want to maintain the officers going to the doctor. We want to make sure that they can do the essential functions of the job. We want to be able to provide flexibility to the local municipalities and police chiefs to make determinations as to how they're going to deploy their employees. We also want to encourage, the council wants to encourage every single police agency to have a wellness program. We would rather have police officers working out routinely, whether they can pass a test to a specific standard or not, as opposed to them not doing anything for 2.5 years and then in the last 6 months kind of get ready to take a test, barely pass it, and then go back to kind of not doing anything until they have to take the next test. The council feels strongly that this is the way to address this topic. Again, I am here to ask this body to allow this proposal to go through. and support it to allow the Police Standards and Training Council to exercise their statutory authority to oversee these topics. And I certainly stand ready to answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you, Senator Gannon.
Good to see you. So I have a lot of friends who are Medford cops, okay? And so, and they're like in their, when do they retire? 53, 54. They're all working at Fenway Park and going to the Cape all summer, so they have great lives. But they really all, so inside like the Medford Police Station, they have stuff to work. They have a beautiful gym, they work out. All over Mass, they have that. So we just seem to be behind the trend. At the same time, in their early 50s, a lot of these officers, again, it's a more dangerous area in Medford, are routinely called and they get into, they have to use physical force against people. They have to chase people. So I don't want them to be in trouble when they get to a scene and they can't run after the person or they can't defend themselves. So I do see the need of being able to, what does a 53, 54-year-old guy have to be able to run that mile and a half? And give me a rough idea what that time is. If they can't do a 20-minute mile and a half, they're probably in.
I will tell you, I'm in the next age bracket up, so I concentrate on that number. So probably, Chief Crowley, you got the numbers? 15, 30. Do you have the numbers for 15, 16? 1943, 19 minutes, 43 seconds.
Okay, that's a lot of time. It's not the most fast. I think I have one leg, and if you taped it on good, I went last night, so I could still do it. So I'd like to think they could do it. So I hate getting away totally from having a hard number, because sometimes it could cost them their lives if they can't perform, if they can't do those push-ups, if they're not strong enough, if they're not fast enough. So I see some danger in getting rid of all standards and just having it loosey-goosey so we can keep someone on. I realize the administrative side, as you get older, becomes much more of your job. But I hate getting rid of all the standard totally. Anyways, thank you. Just my thoughts and your thoughts. Thank you, John.
Senator McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question, Director. In fire standards and training, there's pretty significant PAT requirements. And my question is, in other states, have they relaxed these requirements? And what has that done over time? Do we have any longer term data? What has it done over time in terms of cost of putting equipment, renegotiated contracts, if they have to get paid to work out like some fire services do? Or they take shift time, duty time to do that. You might not be familiar, but there's a nice gym weight setup at the liquor enforcement office right now. It was some donated equipment, actually. So my question is, what's happened in other states, and do you expect that the overall fitness level and ability to save themselves or me and my family in a time of crisis like Senator Gannon described, how do you expect that to play out over time?
Thank you for that question, sir. I can tell I'm one of 50 in the country. And so we, like every other organization, we have conferences and we get together and we talk. And so this is a topic that is discussed nationwide. I will tell you that in the fire service in New Hampshire, a firefighter, a professional firefighter has to take that test once in their entire career. And then after that, it is really left to the firefighter and the firefighter's home agency to maintain fitness levels to be able to perform specific functions within their job. I think it's also important to recognize that and I was a paramedic in the city of Nashua before I became a cop, so I've been on both sides.
Maybe that's where we know each other from.
Oh, okay.
So was I.
Oh, excellent. For Rock? Did you work for?
Yeah.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, a long time ago.
How funny.
So I can tell you that, and you know, sir, that firefighters, when they take a test, they have to carry a ladder and put it up and climb the ladder. They have to be able to carry a hose at a certain time. And on the police side of the house, those tests, while they exist, they're called physical aptitude tests. That is not what we use up here in New Hampshire. Again, the firefighters take it upon themselves. There's a lot of self-accountability that they work towards maintaining their fitness levels. The chief of that fire department also has the flexibility to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to have you drive the truck because you're 50.
Or run the pump.
Run the pump,
Yeah.
right? And we're going to take these other officers, we're going to deploy them differently. Right now, there's no flexibility for that. It's either you pass this test regardless of what your job is, or if you don't pass the test, you'll lose your job. I can tell you that the state of New Hampshire is the only state that requires this physical fitness testing for incumbent police officers across the state. There is no other state that does that. Instead, just about every state does exactly what this legislation is asking for, which is to provide the opportunity for the employer and the employees to work together to develop wellness programs and let those local police chiefs and local municipalities set standards and maintain standards as to what their community needs from their police officers. With regard to the physical aptitude test, we actually looked at that and we thought, well, maybe instead of making them do this presumptive fitness testing, why don't we develop a test that would measure their ability to do the essential functions of the job? We hired a company to help us with the job task analysis, which was just completed at the end of last year. We're looking at about $50,000 to $60,000 to buy specific equipment to be able to replicate those essential functions. It would be centrally located. That equipment would be centrally located in Concord. Every police department would have to send all of their people to Concord to take this test. Again, the council has deliberated on this for a very long time. And Representative Colby in her presentation today really encapsulates the exact position of the council, which is we want to maintain the ability for police chiefs to have flexibility with regard to how they address wellness in their agency and how they deploy their resources. We also want to make sure that these folks are going to the doctor and making sure that each agency has a policy that addresses wellness.
I have a question, and do you have a copy of the bill?
I have in front of me, yes, sir.
So look on page 2, beginning, it'd be paragraph 7 from lines 22 to 29. Maybe I'm reading this wrong, but it looks to me like the way this is worded, that if we change this to what you have, this is only going to apply to everybody hired after January 1st of 27. What about everybody before?
So there's already a group that is not required to take the test in its entirety. The council was very sensitive in the development of this language to not try to make a retroactive application, because what they did not want to do is they did not want to create a change in any kind of working environment or work standard within agencies. If there was an agency that had a collective bargaining unit in play, we wanted to make sure that we didn't put the town or the police chief in a place where they would have to retroactively apply this new approach to wellness.
So does that mean every officer hired before January 1st of 27 is still going to have to do the test every 2 years?
No,
Or
sir.
3 years? I'm trying to figure out how that applies.
Yeah, so in essence, the way the language is proposed, it eliminates the mandatory 3-year fitness testing and instead would now ask that any officer that's certified after 2027, January 1, would have to comply with going to the doctor and making sure that they can meet the essential functions of the job.
So just to make sure I understand, any current officer is no longer going to have any physical type of requirement?
The there would be if this proposal went through, there would be no mandatory fitness testing for any officer in the state.
So we could have a new hire who's 20 years old, fresh out of the academy, hired just before this, and for the rest of their career, they're going to have no requirements?
The requirements that they would have would be those that were set forth in whatever agency policy that they worked for. And to be clear, just so that you understand, when the fitness testing was first mandated by the state of New Hampshire, I had a full head of hair, and I was teaching at the police academy. I was a training specialist, and I oversaw the physical fitness program, and I saw the control and arrest tactics and all of that stuff. And Director Sweeney was the director at the time. He called me down to his office and he said, "Hey, Lieutenant, we're going to roll this program out." That law, as it exists now, says that any officer hired after a certain date or certified after a certain date, actually the term is hired after a certain date, would be required to take the 3-year fitness testing. And it was not retroactively applied. And so the council just took that same approach when they developed this language, which was, let's not go retroactive, let's just set a date and move forward. So I'm in a group where I don't have to take the fitness test.
If you recall, our police chief in Loudon stayed part-time for many, many years because that kept that exemption in place for him. And wasn't, so we had a part-time chief for a very, very long time for that reason. You're comfortable with this? Having 2 sets of standards, essentially?
Well, in fact,
Well, possibly 3 or 4, actually.
So right now, that's what exists. There's a group that doesn't have to take it, and there's a group that does have to take it. And again, I'm here to represent the council and the council's position, and the council, again, deliberated for quite some time to help develop this language.
I just want to make sure, and I apologize to keep beating on the point, but I just want to make sure that we're not creating a situation, for the representative discussed, having someone that couldn't comply or maybe isn't. I just want to make sure we're not creating a situation where there's a tougher standard on the folks that are already employed than what we're putting on the folks that are coming on. And that's what it feels like might be happening. I'm trying to get my head around it.
No, sir. It's candidly, it would be the opposite, which is to relieve this very black and white. You either pass the test or you don't work. That's the part that's being removed. That timeline is just for folks to have to go to the doctor to in essence, be checked out to do the essential functions.
Just want to make sure I was reading. Right.
Yes, sir.
Let me do Senator Alshaw first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning. So I'm gonna build off of Chairman Pearl's questioning, and I'm looking at page 4. And with being mindful of your reference to collective bargaining agreements, and that the council was very sensitive to not wanting to upset the apple cart on anything that's currently in place at municipal law enforcement agencies, so that, which leads us to the start date of 2027 moving forward. Within part, what is that, 15, and that within 9 months of the effective date of this section, each law enforcement agency shall adopt an officer wellness program to support this going through. And then I see that there's a mention of collective bargaining. Is it possible, or do you get the feeling from the members that the intention is to try to bring, while it may not be, they might not have to meet the requirements, everyone's got different requirements, that a collective bargaining agreement could put in a physical requirement? Does that happen when they're negotiating with their municipality?
So thank you for that question. I think I understand what you're asking. I can tell you that I've had experience in work environments that are not represented. They don't have a collective bargaining agreement. And then I have managed police agencies that do have CBAs as well. And it has been my experience and what I have seen across the state anecdotally is that collective bargaining units actually look at fitness as a way to build in incentive. And this is kind of another thing that the council recognizes, which is instead of saying you either take the test and pass it or you lose your job, why don't we just allow those employees and employers to work together to build something that is positive, which is, hey, could we have the ability to, work out during the workday? Can we build that into our collective bargaining agreement? Could we take a test that we all agree on, and if we pass this test at this certain standard, that we might earn a day off or an extra monetary incentive? So there's a lot of situations out there where, in some cases, there is a CBA in place. I can tell you when I was the chief in Stratham, it was an unrepresented environment, but I was able to work with the employees to say, hey, listen, if we had a beautiful gym in our station. If we have more than 2 people working, one of you can work out for up to 1 hour. And so even though there wasn't a CBA, I tried to build an incentive to get people to work out. That's really what I wanted, was for them to be well, to be healthy. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Senator McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Altshuler started right where I was going to start as well on page 4. Within 9 months, each agency shall adopt a program. How many law enforcement agencies are there in New Hampshire?
That's an excellent question. Thank you. That's a moving target. And so probably right up around 220 plus or minus. And not to be cavalier, but there are weekly smaller municipalities will reach out to us and say, hey, we don't have a police department anymore because the one police officer that we had just retired or just left. So
Thank you for follow-up. Sure. Thank you for taking some additional questions. So a couple hundred at least will all be required to craft a wellness program that includes all of the following: a defined policies, et cetera. But line 20, a defined fitness test. So we could have 200 different fitness tests?
could very well. And again, to Senator Altshuler's question, that may be something that is discussed between the employees and the employer to decide, you know what, we're going to do this particular test, and if we were to pass it, we would get some kind of an incentive.
One more follow-up. Sure. So if I can't do the, what was it, 18-minute mile or 20-minute mile? I could go to the next department that has a 22. So it's a 12:45 pace. 12:45 pace. So if I can't do that mile and a half, I could go to the next town that gives me an extra 5 minutes and get hired there, or has a different BMI standard or something like that. Is that right? Could that happen?
It could happen, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Further questions?
I'm going to be like you and beat a dead horse just a little
Sarah
more.
Gaddis?
So last night I was going for a little while, and better than that. So I got one leg, I'm overweight. I do go to the gym a lot, but if at the end of the day, I don't want to send a police officer out who's going to have a heart attack out there. I don't want him to not be able to respond to a scene where he has to confront someone, pursue someone. So I think these minimal standards are very minimal. I think maybe if you have a heart condition or something, you can't do it, but anyone who really wants to be in shape of any sort could do this 19-minute mile and a half. Like, it's a very reasonable 12:45. And if you can't do it, you really shouldn't be in the field. Maybe there should be a difference for command officers, don't have to do it anymore. But even then, you're putting them at a risk. So I'm for their health, their safety, their wellness, the people in the field, people they're going to encounter. I think you have to have a mandatory minimum. You know, that's a word I like in the room. But there has to be some mandatory minimum standard. I apologize. But at the end of the day, I think you have to have some standard that's an empirical hard line And if you can't do it, I think you present a danger to everyone.
I would like to offer that under present conditions, there could be a police officer that is required to take this test right now and not take any test or workout or do anything for up to 5 years. But they're still working and they are doing nothing. They're eating gas station hot dogs at 2:00 in the morning, right? And so, and then
Not Chief Crowley, but no.
no, my money would be on Chief Crowley, quite frankly. So the present situation, and this was language that came from one of the council members. We should not be patting ourselves on the back because we make them take a test once every 5 years. That does not demonstrate the officer's capacity to do their job. It doesn't support officer wellness. It is really just kind of checking a box. And really what the council wants to do is build an environment and allow for flexibility with the chiefs and the municipalities to develop a wellness program where we're encouraging and supporting police officers to do exactly what you're speaking to, which is please be healthy enough, work out daily, do something that's going to make sure that you are ready to do your job. The standard that's used now and the test that is used now is not getting us where we need to be.
So would you then say that they need to be more annually tested to see that they're staying at this?
Candidly, if we were to keep some kind of a test in place,
Yep.
and in support of your position, and I think Chief Crowley would say the same thing, they should be tested every year. Maybe they should be tested every 6 months. It certainly brings into question, should we be using the test that we're using right now? And that's a whole nother discussion.
Wouldn't you
But
say the people most of the police officers I know are very into their fitness, very into shape. That sort of goes with the persona of the whole job. So you might have outliers who are at Dunkin' Donuts every day, but I think most of them aren't. I think most of them are working out and want to stay. And I think most chiefs like you gave the opportunities to their officers to work out, just like in Mass, most of the stations. It's built into your job that you can go work out as long as there's not something going on. They'll let you work out every single day, and that's part of your job.
Yes,
But anyway, so I applaud that, and I want everything. I love the idea of having all these programs at the same time. At the end of the day, I think we need to watch over. If you can't meet these minimum things, just like a firefighter carrying the ladder, if you can't do these basic time things, can't do so many push-ups, you're not strong enough. You shouldn't be the guy in the car responding to the scenes either. Thank you.
and could I just add clarification that firefighter only has to take that test once.
Another problem. Thank you.
The fire guys will not be happy with that, but
My final question, I promise. Is there anything currently stopping, each of these law enforcement agencies from having a program to keep their guys in shape and giving them incentives, even though they have to do this test every 2 years?
I'm sorry, Senator, could you repeat that, please?
So right now, in place, they have to take a test every 2 years. Is there anything that's stopping these law enforcement agencies from right now of having a workout room and having these incentives in their collective bargaining to make sure their guys are staying in shape?
There is nothing in place right now that would prevent any of those things that you just mentioned. And in fact, there is a vast number of agencies, particularly those that have CBAs, that have incentives built in with regard to fitness.
Well, it would just make sense to me that it's important, as Senator Gannon said, most of these guys it's important to themselves personally to stay in shape.
Yes.
It's obviously important for their job. Just curious.
Yes.
All right, I'm done. Any further questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ken Miller?
Can you do 19 minutes? I bet you can.
For the record, I did pass my last PT test.
Well, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, and I appreciate your time. My name is Ken Miller. I am the Chief of Police for the town of Bow, and I've been in law enforcement for 26 plus years now. I did the bulk of my career in Connecticut where we did not have a PT test. And anyways, before I get into it, I want to thank Elena, Representative Colby for her leadership on this legislation, as well as the Academy Director Skipper and his staff for all the hard work they put into this collaboration and bringing this bill to its current form. To me, this bill represents a necessary modernization of how we manage personnel and wellness within our departments. By shifting the authority over physical fitness standards to a local level, we're not lowering our standards. We're empowering our chiefs to implement comprehensive year-round wellness programs that better reflect the daily realities of the job. And like Director Skipper just said, in Bow, we already have some wellness incentives in place, which includes providing our officers the opportunity to work out during the shift. We've established a partnership with a local jiu-jitsu academy that allows our officers to train in jiu-jitsu at no cost up until their blue belt. This type of functional fitness focuses on de-escalation, control, and tactical endurance. It ensures our officers are truly prepared for the physical encounters they may face while simultaneously prioritizing their long-term health and safety. Just go back a little bit to what was brought up earlier. Back in 2021, when I was taking the PT test, I actually got hurt taking the test. I was doing CrossFit 3 times a week, working out all the time to stay in shape, as I always did throughout my entire career. And when I was doing the run, I stepped on a rock and I broke a bone in my foot. I finished the run, but now today I have an injury that my foot has never been the same since that test. So that's kind of where I come from with this, is that my certification is tied to this test. And now next time I go take the test, if for some reason I can't do the 1.5 miles in 19 minutes, if I do it 19:30 or whatever it is, then I'm going to lose my certification. So that's a big reason why I'm a proponent of bringing it back to the departments and having more of a holistic wellness approach that can include mental health, physical fitness, health, nutrition, things like that, and having a policy that the working through the academy and having departments work hard to maintain their staff through that way. To me, it makes more sense. Not to mention, we are an incredibly difficult hiring environment. We have seen qualified, experienced officers leave in New Hampshire for states like Massachusetts and Vermont that do not have these rigid state mandates. In addition, I've interviewed out-of-state certified officers for some of our open positions that led to these officers dropping out of the process because they are not comfortable with having their certification tied to an ongoing 3-year PT test. It's a lot of stress. Every 3 years, you got to go out and take this test. And I think this test in itself is a heart attack waiting to happen. You have a lot of people that wait to the last minute and they start exercising to get this to do this test, and that's when they have injuries, and there's other situations like that. I think the current 3-year test unfairly penalizes veteran officers who may have minor physical limitations but possess decades of invaluable investigative and leadership experience. This bill allows us to retain that talent and remain competitive. The amendment encourages departments to adopt holistic wellness programs that include injury prevention and mental health support. I believe these programs are far more effective at extending an officer's career and ensuring long-term health than a high-stakes anxiety-invoking recurring test. Modern policing requires tactical strength and endurance. Local control allows us to pivot toward functional fitness standards that actually support what an officer does on a shift. Furthermore, removing the mandate for state scheduled refreshers reduces the administrative burden on both the state and local agencies. In my opinion, this bill represents a common sense optimization of our personnel management. And thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you for your testimony. Question, Senator Gannon?
So why can't I have both? I want you to be in the best shape. I want you to have all these programs available all the time. But at the end of the day, it's, again, for safety reasons for you and everyone on the street, I want, if you're the guy in that cruiser showing up, you never know what you're going to face. You never, right? Any day you go out, you don't know what you're going to have to do. Could get shot.
Yeah.
You might have to run. You might have to lift. Who knows what you need to do. So at the end of the day, I still want you to be in, you got to do some, maybe 19 minutes, you need more time. Maybe it's 20 minutes. But at the end of the, there has to be some empirical thing that you have to minimally do something. And I encourage you, I want to have the training. I want to have the gym. I want you to, jujitsu sounds great. It's what you need to know on the job for defense and stuff. That's all wonderful. But I don't feel bad for the officer who doesn't stay in shape. That's part of his job. And to the best of his ability, he should try to be in physically good shape.
Yes.
Why can't I have both? Why can't I have a test, but encourage you to stay in the best shape you can be?
Because from my opinion, the 3-year PT test mandate is not needed. I think right now, even though we incentivize people to do things, they're not all doing that. And they're waiting to last minute to take these tests. So at least by having a policy in place and something that now will give us some teeth and now kind of getting this programs going and having people having to do it, that's something that's not going on now. So like in my case, I routinely work out. I did, like I said, I was doing CrossFit for many years. Right now, I'm currently doing Orange Theory. I'm always doing something to stay in shape. I've done it my whole career in Connecticut. We never had this test. We always stayed in shape. I don't know of any officer that responded to a call and had a heart attack, not anyone that I've known. It does happen, I'm sure. But I can tell you that the test, to me, is just not needed. I think if we have a policy in place, working with the academy, some standards, you got to go to the medical doctor every year to get signed off. I think there's a lot of things in place that we can incentivize more people to get involved, while also focusing on not just the PT part of it, but mental health and nutritional, and find ways to actually, have our officers live longer, better lives and have a longer career. Like I said, prior to that test in 2021, my foot was fine. I broke my foot taking the test. And so to me, it's just it's a stress that is not needed. It's additional anxiety. Every 3 years, you got to worry about this test. And I know people are trying to get in shape last minute. And I think I think there's a better way. And we're the only state in the country that does this. I think there's a lot of evidence, I'm sure, across all states that, what they're doing is working. And I think having a policy in place, working through the academy, is a better way to move this forward. So I support this bill and I ask you to support it.
Senator McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief, for taking my question. A couple things to unpack. I heard you say multiple times that the test isn't needed, but it's in the bill. It says a defined test that establishes if such test is adopted by the agency that establishes performance standards and minimum passing scores. You also said that we're incenting people and it's not working. So should we have incentives? Should we have a test or not have a test? And then separately, what would your test be for your department? Because you're going to have to make one according to this.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So touch base on what I said is that I'm talking about the current PT test in its current form. It's a 3-year mandated test. Your certification is tied to this test. What I'm saying now is, yeah, we do incentivize it, but there's no policy, there's nothing in place that now there's a requirement that you still have to do something. Having this policy and working through the academy with their guidelines is going to give us now that opportunity to put some things in place where people will still have to meet some standards, but their certification won't be tied directly to a test that's actually not even supported by the Cooper standards themselves to use in this manner, from what I understand. The test itself, to me, just it's not needed as long as if we're doing these other things. And having another type of test within your own agency, I think makes a lot of sense because it gives us the control. What type of test would I would do? I would probably do a 500-meter row, maybe some push-ups and something other than sit-ups. Right now, if you got to do 28 sit-ups. You're doing, your hand slips, that one don't count. It's a very arbitrated and it's old, and I just don't think it's needed. Nobody does sit-ups anymore. Sit-ups aren't good for your back. It's not good for my neck when I'm done taking this test, I can tell you that. So I just think this new amendment, which I support, brings it back to the department. There's policies in place, and there's still a test they have to take. That's something that we're not doing now. Right now, it's just incentivized, but it's not just now. It won't be tied to your certification, if that makes sense.
I'll say it.
I think so.
All right.
You could have a policy though now if you wanted to, as chief of the department. You could say, this is what we do here. And once a year, you've got to do a 500-meter row and go home. No
Yeah.
sit-ups.
Well, we haven't decided what that test would look like yet. I just threw something out. I do CrossFit. I do a lot of Orange Theory. Rowing is a full body movement. It brings in it's a lot of work to row. I don't know if anybody hasn't done it. It's a full body workout. So that would be one. It could be other things. It could be, anything. It could be bench pressing. There could be a lot of other tests. I just throwing something out there. We do routinely in CrossFit, and that's what the academy pushes a lot too. They're big into CrossFit and jiu-jitsu and all these things. I'm just trying to find a more common sense way because we are losing people with experience. People don't want to come here because they don't want to be tied to this test. And like I said, people are going to other states. And I've interviewed people personally who were all excited about coming. And then when they found out the exact word, 3P, no, I'm not doing it because it's too much stress. There's too much tied into it. Every 3 years to have to pull this together. I think this is a common sense way to bridge that gap and move this forward.
I can offer up my farm unloading hay in the summer. It's a
There
great
you go.
quality workout.
He tries to go.
There you go.
Every year.
I can't
something.
get anybody to
I
take me
don't
up.
know what happens there.
Yeah,
All right, thank you so much for your testimony.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Chief Crowley, you didn't check off speaking. Do you want to? All right. You're the only opposed one we have here, so I wanted to give you an opportunity.
And I have to, full disclosure, the number that I gave you, the 1.5 miles of 50 and 59 was the female group. The male group is 1433. So we'll start that off with the mistake that I made from looking at the wrong sheet. But I appreciate you giving me some time. I come in strong opposition to this bill and not change the law requiring a 3-year fitness testing for police officers. I've been a police officer now for almost 43 years. I've been involved in training for most of that. I've been a health and wellness instructor in Massachusetts for the last 30 plus. And we've done a lot of work and research on this subject. New Hampshire, and I hear it said in a negative connotation in the last year that New Hampshire is the only state in the country that requires it. That makes us a leader. That doesn't make us a follower. That makes us better. That is an indication of our commitment to maintain the highest standards for those that wear the uniform in the state. We haven't compromised our position, nor should we. One of the things that I've been able to do over the course of the last 8 years in Atkinson is I get to go to conferences, and I've presented and spoke to a lot of people from around the country. When you tell them that you're in New Hampshire and they say, oh, it's a job and whatever, and I tell them the 3-year requirement, to the person, they all say the same thing. I wish we had that, because they don't. Every police officer, every transfer into New Hampshire, including myself, since January 1st of 2001, has to take the 3-year fitness test to maintain the certification. Everyone. You knew that when you took the test. You knew it when you signed on the line that you were going to have to do this. 25 years of law enforcement officers in New Hampshire have been subjected to this test. So over the course of 3 years, every officer that's fallen into that category has to take the test. So even though we're close to 4,000 officers, there's somewhere between 3,400 and 3,500 that have to take this test in a 3-year period. It has a 99.9% passing rate. The number of officers during the course of those 3 years that lose their certification because they didn't pass the test is in the single digits. The test is not that hard, honestly. And I'm not saying that trying to sound like a jerk. I'm just saying, based on the numbers, and I'll touch on that in a second, why would we get rid of something that's got a 99% success rate? I don't understand that. I've heard that we're losing officers to states without a PT standard. If an officer leaves New Hampshire to go to Massachusetts, it's not because of the PT standard, it's because of the money. I don't know any officer that's left the job in New Hampshire because they couldn't pass the 3-year standard that they knew was coming when they signed on to begin with. The test is based on the Cooper's Aerobics Institute. Now it's the Kenneth Cooper Institute at Texas Tech University. It's still in use today, but they've adjusted it, and they continue to study and research what are the best judgments of physical fitness. And I'll touch on that in a second. Currently, the way the law stands in New Hampshire is the Cooper standards require you to pass the 35th percentile in push-ups, sit-ups in a mile and a half. 35th percentile. That means, based on age and gender, 35% of the people of your age and your gender can do this. What it also means is 65% can do more. So the standard is not that high. In fact, when you look at the original standards that came out in a nice color-coded chart, and you look at the levels that they have, it starts at superior and it goes to very poor. 35% is in very poor. So I have my own perception, as the senator said, maybe it should be an annual thing. But I digress. Does the test need to be updated? Absolutely. It's antiquated. Push-ups, sit-ups, mile and a half. Sit-ups, for the most part, have gone away. Even Massachusetts now has a 4-step test to get into a police academy. They've gotten rid of the sit-ups and they went to a plank. They've added the 300-meter run. And what happened in Massachusetts is, to get into a police academy, we started our police academy in my past department, and we trained thousands of officers from around the state. So it's a regional academy. The first year that we did it, you had to pass the 40th percentile of these Cooper standards in 10 different exercises. The 3 that we do, plus the 300-meter run, bench press, sit and reach, shuttle run, body fat, you had to pass at 40% to get in. You had to get to 50% to get out on the other side. That was a requirement. And this is how I know if this is not required, it will not work. The following year, Massachusetts got rid of that standard. They went to a physical abilities test, and it was an obstacle course that you had to run around a certain amount of time. Challenging, but not that challenging. So that year when we did the police academy, we had 102 recruit officers show up on day one. We gave them the same testing that they would have needed the year before to get in, and 76 failed. And out of those 76, 15's numbers were worse than they were the year before. Why? Because they didn't have to do it. Because it wasn't required. So if we don't require it, it's not going to get done. We sat on a committee. I was put on a committee with 2 other police chiefs, the sheriff, Sheriff Moen, representatives from the Hampshire State Police, 2 representatives from Police Standards and Training. And they asked us to evaluate over the course of 6 or 9 months what's in place now. Director Skipper mentioned the job task analysis and what came out of that, and that was a statewide survey that was put out. And we sat down in September to finalize our outcomes, reviewing the job task analysis, review different tests that are going on around the country. And the first thing that we put in, the working group, this group that was assigned that job, believes that the 3-year incumbent physical fitness test should remain essential to health and wellness in New Hampshire law enforcement. But the current test, policies, and the RSA need updating. So we understand that the test is antiquated right now, and we're working on coming up with a better job-related test. We don't want to get rid of the 3-year requirement and put it back on the cities and towns because it will not get done. You need to maintain a statewide standard in firearms. We have a statewide regulation of firearms. You have to qualify every year, and you have to qualify to a minimum score. If you don't, it affects your certification. Yet 96% of police officers in New Hampshire will never draw their weapon on duty. They will never have an on-duty incident with a firearm. But we require that every year. We didn't put that back to the cities and towns and say, come up with a qualification course and we'll see if it works. They mandate it. It's a statewide requirement. Every police officer in the state has to meet that requirement. Why do we not do the same thing for physical fitness? I would venture to say, and I've seen it, because I've been out on the range a lot, there are more failures in firearms qualifications than PT. And you have the same situation where if you shoot twice a year, a month before you go out to the range, people are going to their private range and working on their skills. So police officers need to be in good physical condition every shift of every day. There is a direct correlation to the fact that officers in good physical health have good mental health. The mental stresses on this job that it puts on your body and your being are handled better by people in better physical condition. Healthy officers in good physical and mental condition make better decisions. They recover faster. They serve their communities more efficiently. Better decisions lead to less use of force incidents, less stress-related illnesses, and an overall better quality of life for our police officers. Officers who have a good quality of life transfer that attitude into the relationship to the people that they serve. One of the things that we need to understand is we can't erase the human factor, right? I could get rid of all problems in law enforcement, just stop hiring human beings. It's just not possible. We come out of the same pool. Everybody's the same person. Having watched this over the year, the mindset of young people, they're very intelligent. They ask a lot of questions. You can tell them what, but they want to know why. So if you can explain to them the why, they're good with it. But you have to make them do it because it won't get done. Currently, the law says that you have to take a form to a physician, a physician's associate, or a registered nurse who has conducted a medical exam of the officer according to protocols adopted by the council, certifying, in the opinion of the examiner, the officer is physically capable of participating in the council's physical fitness test. So you go to the doctor and they say, they check your heart, they check your blood, they do all that, your physical, and they sign off and say, you can take the test. And at my age, what the numbers are aren't that hard. And they look at me and go, you better be able to do that, right? I mean, it's just the way of life. Just to take that test, to do these 3 events. That's what they're saying you do. Now they're taking that line out. If you look at Section 7, and it says that same group, the physician, the physician's associate, or a nurse practitioner, is going to do the same medical exam and make the determination based on examining that officer that they are physically capable of performing the essential physical functions of a law enforcement officer. How in God's name do they know that?
That was going to be my question.
How do you, how does it,
Yes.
I mean, I have a great general practitioner, but he has no idea unless he's been in a police officer. You brought up a couple scenarios. Domestics, running up 4 flights of stairs to get to a domestic as the husband's beating up the mother. Running up a driveway into a country club because you have an active shooter going on. And just as a point on that, because that happened in Nashua, Nashua requires an annual test. So they already do it. There are departments that require annual tests. You can do that as long as you maintain what the state says you have to do. In closing, if we get rid of the statewide standard, we no longer lead. We're just in line with everybody else. We no longer stand out, we stand down. Our standards are not higher. They're where they need to be. They're higher than everybody else's, but we need to lead in that category. If the 3-year physical fitness test is eliminated, you will see a dramatic surge in officers who are overweight and out of shape. Guaranteed. You will see a rise in officer injuries with an increase in recovery time, a rise in heart and other health-related issues because of being overweight. Use of force cases will go up. More officers will be filing for disability retirements based on an on-the-job injury. We take better care of our officers so they can take better care of our communities. That's the bottom line. Within that standard, now my recommendation is send it back to New Hampshire Police Standards and Training. We are working on a program right now. Within that program, there are waivers for a situation like the chief. There has to be a waiver system that if you have somebody that is whose training, experience, value to their department can't be replaced, and they get an illness or injury, especially if it happens on duty, there has to be a waiver process to be able to keep that person on. But when you look at who's passing the test, the percentage of people that are passing the test, even the ones that aren't, it's a very, very, very small number. But there has to be a way of doing that. There was an officer in Plastow who broke his ankle during a training thing, and he doesn't even walk right, never mind run right, and he lost his certification. He went to work somewhere else. That's somebody that you could put in a different position, but there has to be a way of doing that. I recommend that you don't pass this, that you voted inexpedient to legislate so that we send it back to the training council. We come up with that system that works better. All you're saying is keep a 3-year standard. You have to take a physical fitness test every 3 years. Let the council, let this committee go back to work and come up with a test that works better for the job based on all the information that they've given us. And I appreciate the length of time that you gave me.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? All right.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, seeing none, we're going to close the hearing on House Bill 1805. Representative Hill, are you ready? We're gonna open up the hearing on House Bill 1097. And I.
Writing the bill for minimum standards for senators.
Give us a try.
We'll recognize Representative Hill. Good morning.
Good morning, Senators. For the record, I am Representative Greg Hill. I chair Legislative Administration. I also cover the town of Northfield. This is a quick bill, I think, for you. This is the second time that you will have seen it. And I will provide you a couple of pieces of information. Don't, here you go. Those are all of the copies, so I'll lick one back if you don't mind. This is a bill that passed virtually unanimously last term. We ended up sending it to the governor. At that time, it was Governor Sununu, and he vetoed it. And so now it's coming back. Also unanimous and on consent in the House, and I'm hopeful the same will be in the Senate, so we can find out what the view of a different governor would be. This came about from a constituent in my town, your district, that had filed a right-to-know request based on the fact that he couldn't find the Andrew Jackson historical road sign. Good morning, Senator. Yes, good morning. He couldn't find the historical road sign for Andrew Jackson's visit to Concord, and so he started asking questions. And he found some disturbing, I guess, revelations with the fact that some of our road signs were being modified or removed based on some things that could be put in a category of political correctness. They wanted to change some of the names because they weren't kind to one side or the other. Things like that. So it cried out for some oversight from the legislature, and that's what this bill does. The amendment that came out of our committee was to change who would be doing that oversight. And if you recall, we went to a committee of conference last time this bill was here, and I think it was Senator Smith. Representative Smith, I think Speaker Shurtleff was there. There was about 100 years of experience, and they couldn't come up with a logical place. We've now settled on the historic committee, the joint historic committee, to be the oversight.
Did we send it to fiscal or something? I can't remember.
I think it was coming down to whether it was legislative money versus state money.
I forget what we did with it.
I
remember doing it, but
yeah.
Ben is shaking his head yes, so I think we're right.
That's kind of where I am as well, Senator. I suspect this will take a lot less time than the last bill for contemplation.
Well, since you're the only one signed up to speak, I suspect.
Well, that's always a good thing, isn't it? I'm happy to take any questions if you have them. You have in front of you two pieces of paper, one that shows medium priority and one that shows high priority, and those were created by the agency. So that's where it goes.
All right, Senator McGee with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Holt, for taking my question. On the high priority list, I think you may have answered it. The comments in the notes column, who wrote those?
The agency.
Okay, so I'll ask the agency. Thanks.
Fine, that'd be great.
Oh, they're not signed up.
But we have no one else signed up, but that doesn't mean we can't ask.
Maybe Ben would like to join us.
Sure.
Thanks.
Further questions for Representative Hill? All right, seeing none, thank you.
I should also point out the letter that I gave you was also a part that came at the same time from Representative Smith, who was having difficulty in her town of Durham on a similar matter. Thank you again.
Thank you. Ben, do you want to speak or you want to answer questions? All right.
I can tell you that there was a committee set up.
You'll have to come up. Come on up. See the way I drag you in unknowingly?
You'll have to explain this to my commissioner.
That's fair.
Thanks for the question.
Just
So-
please introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ben Wilson, Director of the Division of Historical Resources. This all started with Governor Sununu's executive order about reviewing all programs in state agencies that involved things like historical markers and that sort of thing. And so the program was reviewed by a committee set up at the agency. It involved folks from DOT who we run the program cooperatively with, as well as stakeholders in the community, folks from the indigenous community, and others. And I can get the list for you if asked. And so they went through all 290 markers or whatever the number is at this point, reviewed all of the narratives and basically took testimony from folks who were bringing up various markers for changes or for removal. And that's how that list was put together.
So in fairness to Ben, if you have questions, I will give you the option of answering if you can. If you can't, you can take them back and provide us an answer later. How's that? Is that
Sounds
fair?
fine. Yep.
Senator Rivera?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nice to see you this
Good
morning.
to see you.
So when the committee hears the testimony and takes input from stakeholders and historians and amateur historians and historical societies and all of that, who makes the final decision?
The committee basically made the decision in cooperation with DOT.
Okay, great, thank you.
Senator McHugh?
Thank you for agreeing to answer some questions if you can, and if you can't, I understand as well. So my question is just back to this chart that of the high priority ones in particular. There's some notes that categorize or characterize a various number of monuments, some of which I'm familiar with, some of which I'm not. But the words like majorly insensitive, one-sided history, missing context, flowery, nationalistic, no mention of controversial history. Who wrote those?
I'm not certain.
Okay. Could you find out?
I guess if the notes exist, I would have to go back and do the research.
All right, if there's anything available, please provide
Thank you.
it to the committee.
Sure.
Thank you. Further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you, Ben. Anybody else wants to testify on House Bill 1097? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing. Representative Flanagan's here, so we will open up the hearing on House Bill 1109. Come on up.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Senators. Thanks for looking at my bill. There's some history in this bill that I want to share first. This bill was started because of the Marconi situation. Not Justice Marconi, but Gino Marconi. Now, regardless of what you may think about him being on the seacoast and his behaviors there, he was in fact brought in front of 4 grand juries without knowing what his charges were for his suspension. Meanwhile, as a state, we were paying for his salary. And it was almost 2 years that our Attorney General was trying to figure out what to charge him for. And ultimately, he charged them for something that he's been doing for the last 23 years. And the current replacement, because Mr. Marconi retired, is still doing it. So that was the deciding factor on introducing this legislation. Now, I introduced this legislation last year. It passed on consent in the House, and it came to the Senate. And I don't know what happened because I don't remember testifying it. I think the chairman of the Labor Committee, because it came through Labor last year, must have took the reins because we went through committee at 100%, and it was a voice vote on the consent calendar. But someone put a amendment on it in the Senate. I think it was Senator Bertzel, which created some issues on ethics. Former Representative Hill came to me and showed it to me, and he says, please don't ask to accept this change. So I didn't accept the change, and it died on the vine. And the chairman of the Labor Committee, which I serve on, committed that he would again get the thing through and that type of thing. Well, it didn't go through the Labor Committee this year. It went through eDNA. And sort of on the side note, when I introduced it in eDNA, they all supported it. But one person wanted to add municipal employees. I said, I don't have a problem with that. And then previously, there was a concern about collective bargaining agreements that it may conflict with it. So I added that language, and I think the people that were concerned about that, one of the union members that was also a rep, he was happy. So there was some changes again. But in looking at it, the bill itself meets that criteria of, getting the employee notice on why they're being suspended. No more floating around, no more, dealing with lawyers or whatever. You specifically will know the issue that you're being charged with or, dealing with. And there's the subsequent renewal, review periods of 90 days. But, as a state, we were paying this gentleman, I believe it was 1.5 years or not 2 years, this whole thing was going on. And of course, we know about his wife, at least she was charged, but then it was negotiated down to some ridiculous misdemeanor. So the purpose of the bill is to save the state money. It was to clarify for the employees what was involved as it relates to any suspension. And I believe there's a few other people that had similar concerns with it too. And with that, I'll take any questions you may have of me.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions?
No?
Looks like we're good.
Senator Gannon, you may want to call me later. Sort of mandatory, if you know what I mean.
Thank you for your testimony.
No, thank you.
Tyler.
All right. Oh, and for the record, Hillsborough 45, Hollis, Brookline, Mason, and Greenville.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee for having me today. I'm here on behalf of the professional firefighters of New Hampshire, representing 45 locals across the Granite State and about 2,000 active and retired members. I just want to send regards President Reel and Secretary Treasurer McAllister. Both wish they could be here today, but unfortunately had conflicting appointments. But I'm here today in support of HB 1109. HB 1109 to us is about transparency and fairness. It ensures that public employees who are placed on leave with or without pay receive timely written notice explaining the reason for the suspension, and that they are kept informed throughout the investigation process. Quite frankly, this is common sense legislation. This is good reform. You might be surprised how often this actually comes up. Off the back of my hand, I could probably think of 2 instances we had inside of our organization with our locals that people were placed out on leave and weren't given reasons why. And this would make it so they would get to be informed within that 7-day time period and then would get follow-ups every 90 days after that. The lack of communication of what we've seen with our members creates unnecessary stress for the employee, their families, especially if they're unpaid. And then it really starts undermining the morale of the firehouse and erodes the trust in the process. We fully understand that investigations are sometimes necessary, but they should not come at the expense of basic transparency and due process of the situation. This bill doesn't prevent employers from conducting investigation. It simply requires that employees be informed of the reason of their suspension within a reasonable time frame and receive periodic updates so they're not left in the dark. Our members are public servants who are held to high standards, and they accept their responsibility. In return, they deserve a process that is clear, fair, and transparent. HB 1109 helps strike that balance. For those reasons, we respectfully ask the committee to support the passage. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tyler, thank you for taking my question and for being here. I agree with all of those things that you said, and the lawyer side of me says anything that you put in writing sometimes will limit what you can do in the future. So would you be opposed to some kind of language in here that that lets that reason, no investigation is done in 7 days, lets that reason not limit what the charges are at some point?
I would be interested in seeing that in writing. I don't really have an opinion on that right now, but it's something that if you wanted to bring up, we'd be more than happy to collaborate with.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that.
Of course.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah Cohen? Sarah Burt Cohen, sorry.
Either one works, Senator.
Sorry. I realized after I read it, I left part of it out.
That's okay. My name is Sarah Burt Cohen. I represent the New Hampshire Municipal Association. The New Hampshire Municipal Association actually opposes this bill for a couple of reasons. What Senator Reardon brought up is one of those reasons. 7 days is an extremely short period of time with sort of that broad language of a written notice detailing the reasons for the suspension. If you're in the midst of an investigation, that can be difficult to put into writing for a person within 7 days. The state administrative rules, how they outline their investigations are written notice goes to the person, you are going on suspension, and then at the end of the investigation, they get notification of the outcome of that investigation. 7 days is extremely short, especially if it's an investigation that the outcome of is that you're back to work and that this was a quick investigation where there is no finding of bad behavior that would cause there to be additional discipline involved. The other issue is there seems to be, this language could also contradict what's in the administrative rules currently. I know administrative rules don't trump statutory language, but currently there is a process in the administrative rules set out by the Department of Personnel. Now, the state employees are outside of my lane, I get that, but I think this contradiction would start setting aside a couple of different buckets for people to fall into, and it would be very confusing. You would have, excuse me, state employees who would fall under administrative rules who are also in a CBA, which are employees who are sort of exempt from this language because of the language in the CBA, and then you'd have non-representative represented employees who would have yet another sort of be in their own bucket, which would presumably fall under the statutory language. We think that could be problematic in determining it, where you fall, how your notification works without maybe some clarification. Additionally, this language is in RSA 275, which is protective legislation for all state all employees in the state, both private and public. I think that could cause some confusion. I know there is definition in this, so it does indicate there's public employees, but if you don't necessarily look all the way down to the end of the page, you may think as a private employee, this would also apply to you. So with that, I will tell you we oppose it because of this confusion that it could cause. Happy to look at any language that Senator Reardon proposes to help clarify. And I'm happy to answer questions.
I guess my one question is, would the 7-day notification potentially jeopardize an ongoing investigation? That's my question.
I think it could. And that's sort of my biggest concern, that it could jeopardize that, depending on what that notification needs to look like. If it's, I mean, this says a written notice detailing the reasons. So are you detailing those reasons for that investigation? Or is it a written notice that says, I'm going to go with something, you're on suspension if there's sexual harassment, right? You're being suspended because you've been accused of sexually harassing another employee, and they need to investigate that. If you go into any more detail than that base sort of notification, you could jeopardize it, because then what is that detail? Is that detail, Sarah Burke Cohen accused you of sexually harassing you, you know what I mean? I'm getting myself, but if I accuse somebody and that's in the notification, that becomes problematic.
Okay, I think that answers my question.
Okay,
Any other
sorry, it got
questions?
a little confusing there because I
No.
confused myself in my head.
All right, seeing none, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Cassie Abbott from the Department of Labor. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Cassie Abbott, and I'm the Department of Labor's Legislative Liaison, and with me is the department's Deputy Commissioner, Danielle Albert. The department has reviewed House Bill 1109. We are neutral on the bill, so we take no position. We do believe that we understand the bill's intent, and we can regulate it. The department understands this bill, that it is amending RSA 275, which is protective legislation, by adding in a new subsection under RSA 83, which will now be RSA 275-84, notice of suspension. The department interprets this bill as the scope within the department to be a record-keeping requirement that the department would be looking for. So we would be looking to see that a public employee was suspended with or without pay, and that notification was given to that employee within 7 days. And we would also be looking to ensure that updates were provided every 90 days as set forth in this proposed language. The department does not interpret this proposed language to give the department any authority to review the notification on its merits. We would be simply ensuring that the record keeping and notice was provided. As a technical point, the department would like to point out that in lines 6 through 8, it states that the suspended employee shall be provided with periodic updates regarding the status of the investigation every 90 days until a final decision is made. If the intent is for that notification to be in writing, we would encourage that that be specific. So including the suspended employee shall be provided with periodic updates in writing, just so that is clear to everyone that those updates should be in writing. And then as a final note, the department interprets this proposed language to fall under its civil penalty authority in RSA 273-11-A, which would require an employer in noncompliance to be given a warning first, and then subsequent violations would be subject to civil penalties. And with that, the department's happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Do we have any questions? Senator Altshuler.
Yes, thank you very much for taking my question. RSA 273-11A, that's the penalties for.
Yes, that's correct. That the department interprets this proposed language to fall under the department's civil penalty authority under that statute, 273-11-A.
And so if this fell under that statute, what would be the penalties for noncompliance?
So the reading of the statute states that now civil penalty can be assessed up to $2,500 unless specifically set forth in another statute. So the department, if after given a warning, subsequent violations were found and civil penalties were warranted, we could assess up to $2,500 unless this statute clearly lined out something else for civil penalties.
Thank you. No.
Senator Reardon.
What you just said raised my question. After giving given a warning. We agree that there are instances in the workplace where maybe a warning isn't necessary. Somebody is just put out on leave.
Yes, that's an excellent question, and that is correct. In 27311A, there is an enumerated list that provides instances where no warning is necessary before assessing civil penalties. The department does not interpret this proposed language to fall under that enumerated list.
Got it. Thank you.
Further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
It's all on my list. Anybody else that'd like to testify on House Bill 1109? All right, seeing none, we'll close the hearing. I don't believe, actually, none of you were here for the very first bill, which is a really, it was just me. I did fine, but I didn't want to exec it on my own. This is a very simple bill brought forth by the department, asked for by the Department of Agriculture, dealing with our favorite topic of pet vendors. This was Representative Bixby's bill.
Yes.
If you all are comfortable with it, I'll exec it. I know Senator McGee is not here, but he had no, I wasn't aware of any opposition to it. If you're not, I'm happy to hold off till next week.
Was there any testimony other than the?
Commissioner and Representative Bixby, both in support. So I am happy to hold to give you an opportunity to review the hearing if you'd like to. It's up to you.
No, I actually ran into Representative Bixby when I was switching back from Granite Place.
All right, how about,
He
I'll
was
take a
coming
motion
here,
to go into
so,
exec.
yeah.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Senator Altshuler and Senator Reardon. All in favor? Aye. I will move ought to pass on House Bill 1157 since I was here.
Second.
For the benefit of the committee, there's an loophole in our current statute that allows people, or that people are taking benefit of and skirting our current requirement for registering as a pet vendor by claiming there's 3 different people that live in the house and each individual one is transferring less than the
10.
required number. So this would simply say that, you know, if it's going to be done at this address, then there is one of the people has to be registered as a pet vendor, which would then trigger the ability for the department to do an inspection. So that's essentially what the bill does. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move consent.
Any objection to consent? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
And I will take this one out. I don't know for sure that any of these rest of these we are going to move today. I think the best thing we can do is allow you all to have a look at them. I know there's been some concern, and I know Senator McGee had some input he wanted on a couple of bills, but he had to leave for another meeting. So I think with that, we'll hold the rest of them until next week. We're not in a hurry. So any other bills you want to talk about before we go out of exec?
No, what do we have left? How many are left?
So for the benefit of the committee, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, I scheduled 6 for next Wednesday, and I think that leaves 3 on our list that I haven't scheduled.
10, maybe 4. I see 10 here.
3, maybe 4. I don't have my list right in front of me, and I apologize. I'm going from memory. Oh, maybe that was it then. Maybe I scheduled 7. I was thinking there was 3 left.
7? All right.
Potentially. Tomorrow is
Oh, yeah,
crossover,
that's
so
right.
that will be our last day. The bills that I scheduled for next week did not look terribly contentious, so I don't anticipate a long day. But
you just do?
you never know. We did have longer testimony today on one than I anticipated. Anyway, I would say come prepared next week to do some execing if the opportunity presents itself.
Okay.
With that, I will take a motion to go out of exec. Second, all in favor? Aye. And our work for the day is done, and we'll see you all next week.